The shift does not announce itself. There is no argument, no turning point, no dramatic realization. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, in the way your body responds before your mind catches up. You notice that something that once tightened you now feels looser. A situation that used to demand a reaction now allows a pause. The angels say this is how real change starts, not through confrontation, but through understanding settling where tension used to live. At first, it may feel confusing because nothing external has changed. The relationship looks the same on the surface. The patterns appear familiar. Yet internally, your position is no longer identical. You are not bracing in the same way. You are not preparing defenses or rehearsing explanations. Something inside you has softened, and that softness is not weakness. It is awareness replacing reactivity. This is the beginning of relational realignment. It does not start with deciding what the relationship should become. It starts with noticing how you are no longer willing to abandon yourself inside it. The angels say awareness changes dynamics long before words do. When you see clearly, you stop compensating unconsciously, and that alone alters the field between you and another person. You may notice that your emotional responses arrive later, or not at all. Where there was once an immediate urge to explain, fix, or soothe, there is now space. That space is important. It allows you to feel what is actually happening instead of rushing to manage it. This is not detachment. This is presence without urgency. At this stage, you are not trying to change the other person. In fact, you may realize that the need to change them has quietly dissolved. The angels say this happens when responsibility returns to its rightful place. You are no longer carrying what does not belong to you. You are no longer adjusting yourself to maintain balance alone. The shift often feels subtle because it is internal. You might simply notice that you listen differently. You do not absorb everything. You do not personalize every tone or silence. You allow moments to pass without immediately assigning meaning. This is clarity emerging naturally, not something you force yourself into. What is changing here is your relationship to pressure. Pressure to respond correctly. Pressure to keep things smooth. Pressure to hold the emotional weight of the connection. As that pressure eases, your nervous system settles. And when your nervous system settles, the relationship begins to feel different, even if no one has said a word. The angels emphasize that this phase is not about distance or withdrawal. It is about alignment. You are aligning with your own truth instead of orbiting someone else's expectations or moods. Alignment brings steadiness. Steadiness changes how energy moves between people. You may also notice that your sense of timing has changed. You no longer feel rushed to resolve things. You are willing to let moments unfold without interruption. This does not mean you are passive. It means you trust that clarity does not require force. At this early stage, the shift may only be noticeable to you. Others may not sense it yet, or they may feel it without understanding why. That is normal. Awareness often arrives in one person before it becomes visible in the dynamic itself. The angels say the one who stabilizes first often perceives the change first. There is also a quiet honesty that emerges here. You begin to recognize what feels authentic to you now, not what used to feel necessary. Old habits of over-explaining or self-silencing start to loosen. You are not making declarations. You are simply no longer operating from the same internal script. This is why the beginning feels gentle. There is no rupture, no demand for immediate decisions, just a gradual return to yourself. And that return is what initiates everything that follows. The angels remind you that relationships do not transform because someone is pushed to change. They transform when awareness removes distortion. When you stop reacting from old patterns, the dynamic no longer has the same structure to stand on. This first phase is about recognizing that something inside you has already shifted. You are not waiting for permission. You are not seeking confirmation. You are simply standing in a slightly different place than before. That difference, though quiet, is powerful. It sets the tone for what comes next. As the shift settles, clarity begins to replace reaction. You are no longer responding automatically to what the relationship brings up. Instead, you notice yourself pausing, sensing, and choosing. The angels say, this is the moment where awareness turns into stability. You are not trying to fix anything anymore. You are simply seeing what is actually there. This clarity is not about analyzing the other person. It is about recognizing yourself within the dynamic. You start to notice what you need, what you can no longer carry, and what no longer feels honest to hold. These realizations do not arrive as demands. They arrive as quiet truths that feel settled rather than charged. You may realize that much of the tension that once existed was created by pressure. Pressure to be understood. Pressure to maintain harmony. Pressure to keep things from falling apart. As that pressure softens, the relationship begins to breathe differently. The angels say relationships transform when pressure leaves because truth needs space, not force. At this stage, expectations begin to loosen. Not because you stop caring, but because you stop managing outcomes. You are no longer rehearsing conversations in your mind or anticipating how things should unfold. This does not mean you disengage. It means you are no longer negotiating your self-respect for stability. You might notice that you say less, but feel clearer, or that when you do speak, your words are simpler and more direct. There is less emotional noise behind them. This is not emotional distance. It is emotional alignment. When you are aligned with yourself, communication becomes cleaner without effort. The angels emphasize that this shift changes the dynamic, even if the other person is unaware of it. When you stop compensating, the imbalance becomes visible. When you stop carrying extra weight, the relationship naturally recalibrates. This recalibration may feel unfamiliar at first, but it is more honest. You are also likely to notice that your tolerance has changed, not in a hardened way, but in a discerning one. You no longer override discomfort to keep the peace. You notice it, acknowledge it, and allow it to inform you. This discernment is not judgment. It is self-trust taking shape. At this point, respect becomes central. Not respect demanded from the other, but respect you maintain for yourself. The angels say dynamics shift when self-respect replaces self-sacrifice. When you do not abandon your inner signals, the relationship adjusts around that truth. This phase may bring moments of uncertainty, not because something is wrong, but because you are no longer operating from familiar patterns. Old habits provided predictability, even when they were uncomfortable. New clarity feels different. It is quieter, less dramatic, and that can feel strange at first. You may also notice that emotional intensity decreases. The highs are less sharp. The lows are less destabilizing. This does not mean the connection is weakening. It means the relationship is no longer fueled by tension. What remains is more sustainable, whether it continues or completes. The angels remind you that this is not a test. You are not being asked to prove patience, loyalty, or endurance. You are being invited to stay present without self-erasure. That presence alone is enough to change how the relationship functions. You may see the other person respond differently as well. Sometimes they soften. Sometimes they pull back. Sometimes nothing seems to change at all. But you no longer interpret these responses as reflections of your worth. You understand that your role is not to manage their process. This is where inner stability becomes visible. You are steady even when the dynamic is not fully defined. You do not rush clarity. You allow it to emerge naturally. The angels say attention shapes meaning, and your attention has returned to yourself. In this phase, you stop asking whether the relationship will change and start noticing how you have already changed within it. That recognition brings a sense of quiet confidence. You are no longer waiting to be met halfway to stand fully in yourself. This is the heart of the shift. From reaction to clarity. From pressure to presence. From managing the relationship to honoring your own balance. What comes next unfolds more gently because the foundation is now steadier. In this final stage, the shift no longer feels like something that is happening. It feels like something that has settled. You are no longer tracking the relationship for signs of change. You are no longer monitoring your responses to see if you are doing it right. The angels say, this is how realignment completes, not with certainty about outcomes, but with steadiness inside yourself. At this point, the relationship is no longer the center of your emotional gravity. You are. This does not mean you care less. It means you are no longer organizing your inner world around what the relationship might become. Your sense of balance no longer depends on resolution, reassurance, or mutual clarity. You may notice that you are no longer tempted to push for answers. Silence does not feel threatening. Ambiguity does not demand interpretation. The angels say when inner balance is restored, uncertainty loses its power. You are not waiting for the relationship to define itself before you can feel whole. This is where trust quietly replaces effort. Trust does not mean assuming things will work out a certain way. It means trusting yourself to remain intact, regardless of how things unfold. You know now that you can stay connected without losing yourself, and you can step back without collapsing the bond within you. At this stage, the relationship naturally shows its true shape. If it continues, it does so with less tension and more honesty. If it changes or fades, it does so without drama. Either way, you are not destabilized. The angels say transformation is complete when no outcome feels like a threat to your inner stability. You may also notice that your emotional energy feels lighter. You think less about what should happen next. You are more present in your daily life. Your attention is no longer split between the moment you are in and the relationship you are evaluating. This is not avoidance. This is integration. The angels emphasize that this phase does not require decisions unless they arise naturally. You do not need to label anything. You do not need to conclude anything. When awareness is stable, action happens only if it is truly aligned. Otherwise, stillness is enough. You may find that your boundaries are now effortless. You do not enforce them. You embody them. You no longer need to explain your limits because your behavior already reflects them. This quiet consistency is what allows relational dynamics to settle into their most honest form. At this point, the question is no longer whether the relationship will change. It already has. The change happened in how you show up, how you listen, how you respond, and how you value your own inner signals. That change cannot be undone. The angels say this is why force is no longer needed. You are no longer trying to create movement. Movement happens naturally when alignment is present. And when alignment is present, whatever remains is what truly fits. There is a calm confidence that comes with this realization. Not confidence that everything will go as hoped, but confidence that you will be steady no matter what unfolds. This steadiness is the true outcome of relational realignment. You may also notice that your capacity for connection feels cleaner now. You are open without overextending, available without self-sacrifice, present without self-erasure. This is not something you learned intellectually. It emerged through experience. The angels remind you that real transformation does not demand proof. You do not need to see visible changes in the other person to validate what has happened within you. Your inner balance is the confirmation. As this phase completes, there is nothing to hold and nothing to release. You simply continue forward from a more grounded place. The relationship, whatever its form, exists alongside your life rather than at its center. This is what it means to let the shift finish its work. You do not push. You do not wait. You do not abandon yourself. You remain present, steady, and aligned. And from that place, whatever continues does so naturally. Whatever ends does so gently. And whatever begins next meets you as someone who no longer needs force to feel secure. The angels say, this is how transformation becomes real, not through pressure, but through presence.